Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into something that is absolutely going to flip your understanding of reality, consciousness, and, well, what actually happens between life and death. We're unpacking a really groundbreaking paper. It sits right at this mind-bending intersection where ancient Tibetan mysticism literally meets advanced quantum topology. Think about that. We're talking about the six Bardos. This is a map of the afterlife that's been around for over 12 centuries and how modern physicists are mapping it one-to-one onto E8-dimensional geometry. It's like a giant 8-dimensional mathematical puzzle. So grab a seat because this is going to be a wild ride. I want to hook you right out of the gate with this incredibly profound statement from the paper's executive summary. They write, "We present this mapping not to reduce the sacred to equations, but to elevate physics to the sacred." I mean, wow, that really sets the stakes for us today. The authors aren't just trying to debunk or explain away these deep spiritual experiences. Not at all. They're mathematically validating them. They're suggesting that our oldest, deepest spiritual texts might actually be describing the literal, fundamental physics of the universe. And honestly, that leads us to a pretty massive question. What if the ancient Tibetan map of the afterlife isn't just a beautiful metaphor, but an exact mathematical blueprint of reality? Now, the most staggering claim this paper makes, and this is huge for the physics nerds out there, is that their geometric derivation of the Tibetan afterlife requires exactly 0 free parameters. Now, if you know physics, a free parameter is basically a fudge factor, right? It's a number you just kind of tweak to make your equations fit the real world. Well, this paper uses 0. Every single constant, every threshold, is derived purely from the fundamental math of E8 compactification space. No tweaks necessary. All right, let's dive into this. Section 1, Mysticism meets Quantum Geometry. So the core thesis here is that human consciousness actually cycles through very specific, topologically distinct phase space regions. You've got the 12th century Vajrayāna phenomenological map, the six Bardos, and matching that, you've got the exact transitional trajectories in E8 compactification space, labeled regions I through V. The paper mathematically proves that there are exactly 6, and literally only 6, topologically distinct phase space regions between stable nodes in this geometry. The ancient texts didn't just guess a random number. They documented the exact topological structure of these cosmic transitions. To actually track human consciousness through these regions, the paper outlines 4 specific variables. You've got the Rupa coupling, the Rosetta angle, the shadow partition function, and finally, the Finarette operator. Now hey, don't worry about the heavy math just yet. What really matters here is that by simply tracking these 4 specific properties, the entire Tibetan teaching naturally unfolds directly from the fundamental math of the universe. It's pretty wild.
Moving right along. Section 2, Mathematics of the Living.
Let's start by looking at the states we experience while we're actually alive. So in the Kainai Bardo, that's our normal waking life, the math shows full material anchoring. Our consciousness is completely, 100%, coupled to our physical form. But then, look at the Milam Bardo, which is the dream state. Here, we experience what the paper calls Rupa decoupling. Basically, the physical anchor is temporarily removed. And here is where it gets amazing. The mathematical formulas literally prove that in this decoupled dream state, the mind processes karmic traces 40% faster than it does in waking life. Seriously, think about that next time your head hits the pillow. The math literally validates why ancient traditions used dream yoga to accelerate spiritual realization. Then we have the Sumten Bardo. This is deep meditation, or jhana. The math defines this state as a voluntary suspension of karmic inheritance. So deep meditative absorption safely mimics the death process by completely decoupling that karmic engine. But unlike actual death, the practitioner's volition intentionally maintains the physical anchor. It's like putting the car in neutral. This beautifully and mathematically validates the old traditional mystical adage of learning how to die while alive. Okay, things are about to get a bit more intense. Section 3, the equations of death. This brings us to that massive transition point when the physical anchor permanently dissolves, the Chikai Bardo, the literal moment of death. The paper defines this geometrically as an involuntary access event. At the exact moment the body permanently uncouples, the whole mathematical system hits this inevitable point of zero conditioning. In Tibetan texts, they call this the mother clear light. But the equations reveal something pretty startling. Because of the sheer intense shock of this transition, for an untrained mind, this window of pure clear light lasts only about 1.6 milliseconds. It is incredibly brief. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact mathematical trigger of death.
When the Rupa aggregate, again, that physical anchor we talked about, hits exactly 0, it permanently uncouples. This is the precise moment the system is forced into the mother clear light. It's absolutely not a metaphor, folks. It's a literal phase transition in quantum geometry. So as we move past that tiny 1.6 millisecond mark, the paper introduces what they call the liberation window theorem. You'll notice how the symbols in this equation visually narrow down. They represent the mathematical windows of opportunity for a consciousness to achieve liberation. And the math proves that these windows narrow monotonically. Basically, it becomes progressively harder and harder to achieve liberation the longer consciousness remains in this postmortem sequence. It's wild because these equations perfectly match the traditional warnings that Tibetan monks give to the dying.
Which leads us to Section 4, Visions of the Shadow Subspace. Right, so if liberation isn't achieved in that clear light phase, consciousness moves into the Chonyad Bardo. And this brings us to a highly, highly significant number in both the mathematics and the ancient mystical texts, 100. So what exactly happens when that variable known as the Rosetta angle completely opens up and the shadow subspace just floods into the observer's awareness? Well, you see exactly 100 shadow energetic modes. And the mathematics reveal this absolutely stunning structural split in these modes. Precisely 42 of them are kernel aligned, and exactly 58 of them are kernel orthogonal. Now, if you're familiar with the ancient Zitra texts, your jaw might be dropping right about now. For centuries, Tibetan Buddhists have taught that in the afterlife, you will encounter exactly 100 deities, 42 peaceful deities and 58 wrathful deities. You guys, the ancient texts perfectly, exactly match the energetic modes in quantum geometry. No way, right?
The crucial takeaway here is just so profound. These terrifying monsters and beautiful gods that you supposedly meet in the afterlife, they aren't external beings judging you. The mathematics unequivocally state that they are literally your own fundamental energetic structure made manifest. The gods and monsters of the afterlife are just quantum math projecting your very own spiritual architecture right back at you.
Let's move to our final stage, Section 5, Rebirth by the Numbers. Eventually, those shadow visions fade, and the consciousness desperately seeks a new material anchor so it can be reborn. The system literally needs to find a new home. Enter the Finnerit operator. Mathematically speaking, it acts like a giant cosmic search engine. It scans the multidimensional geometry looking for the lowest energy node that is fully compatible with the accumulated karma of that specific consciousness. It is, quite literally, a mathematical algorithm searching for the right physical host for rebirth. To actually find this new host, the search algorithm has to execute some very specific geometric steps. First, it must traverse the 7 tiers of what's known as the phonoplane. Think of it as a specific multidimensional map. Then, for every single tier, the system executes what mathematicians call Banach's contraction iterations. Essentially, it's narrowing down the search, zooming in to lock onto the exact right physical frequency. And here is the ultimate reveal. The algorithm requires 7 geometric tiers, and it requires exactly 7 mathematical iterations per tier. 7 times 7 equals 49. This mathematical necessity perfectly derives the famous 49 days of the Bardo transition. No fudge factors, no arbitrary numbers were inserted into the equations to make this fit. The 49 days of rebirth are a strict, direct, zero-parameter requirement of the geometry of the universe itself. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. Did ancient Tibetan mystics somehow access the fundamental mathematical geometry of the universe centuries before the invention of quantum topology? I mean, the perfect zero-parameter alignment between the profound spiritual maps of the East and the cutting-edge mathematical physics of today suggests that reality is far more deeply structured and beautifully integrated than we ever could have imagined. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity as much as it did mine. Catch you next time.